So I'm out here on the campus of Virginia Tech, and behind me there's this really awesome Yellowbud hickory tree. It's my second year collecting from it. I just happened to notice it while driving around town. You know, my parents live not too far from here. So it's an area that I frequent. I did not go to school here. Some of my siblings did. That's besides the point. We're here to talk about the hickory nuts. This is an awesome tree for so many reasons, but the main thing that I'm interested in right now is that these nuts are full of oil. And so I'm out here collecting them. We're gonna take them probably to the Asheville Nuttery to press them, squish them into really delicious hickory oil. And the nuts are just starting to fall. Actually, they probably started falling, I don't know, maybe a few weeks ago. Middle of September now. And they'll keep falling and they'll stay good on the ground for a good few weeks. You know, last year I picked them up in October. But what I'm liking to do this year, my methods may change. I'm trying to find the most efficient way, comfortable way to do this. But right now I'm raking all the nuts into piles or little lines like this, and then that way I can go through pretty quickly, sort by hand. I want to get the nuts that I believe to be good. I'm avoiding any nuts that either feel really lightweight, the husk does not want to separate. This husk will not come off the nut. This green one, this comes off, it's hard with one hand, but this comes off super easy. That's a good nut. It's nice to have this open space where the grass is all cut. It makes it super easy to collect. You know, it may not be the best thing, arguably, for the health of the tree to have such short grass, but for collecting the nuts, that's honestly what you need. Ecologically speaking, you know, tall grass cover crops would be a lot healthier for the soil, but again, for picking up the nuts, you need access to the ground. You got to be able to see and reach the nuts, so we need the grass cut short. So places like this, semi-urban areas, you know, forested urban areas, I should say, tend to be really good places to forage. I remember last year when I was picking these nuts up off the ground, the foliage had all turned that golden yellow color that hickories get. It was much further into fall. There's actually, my hands were cold, honestly, when I was picking up some earlier this year, and really glad to be getting these nuts. A lot of folks know this tree as bitternut hickory, not as Yellowbud. I think Yellowbud's a much nicer name. Kind of does the tree more justice. The tips of the buds are very yellow. I'll see. I might be able to show you up on this tree. The branches might be up too high, but I prefer Yellowbud. Most folks know it by bitternut because the nuts are super high in tannins and they will make your mouth pucker up. If you eat one, it's like an unripe persimmon. There's tannins serve a role. For one, several folks, myself included, have noticed that the bitternut hickory tends to have a very low weevil pressure. You don't find very many nuts that have been infected by an insect. The hickory weevil, can be really bad in other species of hickory. They can do a lot of damage to the nut crop. These tannins may be part of the reason why these nuts don't get predated on by the weevils as heavily. The other thing is that these tannins, they're water soluble, they're not oil soluble. So when you press these nuts for oil, none of that tannin makes it into the oil. So the oil is delicious, very edible, no tannins, no bitterness, no astringency at all. It's just that pure hickory flavor. If you haven't had it, I don't really know how to describe it. Closest thing I could say, it's like liquid pecan, but that's the closest thing to it. It's not exactly that. It's better than that even. The nuts themselves have a really high oil content, so it's been, I guess folks say around 80% oil is the number that I typically hear for you know, the oil content within the nuts here. And I'll take one of these and crack one open in a minute. The other really big advantage is that the shells are super thin. You can crack these with your hands like a pecan. They're one of the thinnest shelled hickories, which means that for pressing purposes, you can press these with most presses in the shell, whole nut in the shell. You don't have to do any cracking and sorting and getting out the shell bits. You can just press whole nuts. There's also potential for breeding this with other types of hickories to try to get that thin shell into some of the other hickory nuts. Last year when I was here, I just walked around picking up nuts, putting them into a bucket. I didn't use the rake. This year, like I talked about earlier, I've been raking the nuts into windrows or piles and then going and picking them up from those piles. I'm finding that that's definitely easier. I'm still open to other ideas as far as how to efficiently harvest these nuts. I have used one of those little nut roller picker-upper things, the nut wizard it's sometimes called, but I find that they're not very effective for the hickory nuts. Anyway, picking them up by hand isn't that bad. I also found a really massive Bur Oak on the campus, pretty close to this hickory, kind of on the main quad area. This is a really massive old Bur Oak tree. It has its own sign and little fenced off area. Most of the acorns were not quite ready yet on this Bur Oak, so I just picked up the handful that was on the ground around the edges, but check out this tree. I'm definitely coming back to try to get more acorns from this one. To end things today, here is a video of that same hickory tree last fall when it really had its golden color going.